Long ago, in a land called Galilee, a young woman named Mary lived. She was engaged to a kind man named Joseph, who was a carpenter. Their world was part of a larger land called Judea, a place with rolling hills and ancient towns, where people lived simple lives, farming the land and following their traditions. This was a time when many people hoped for a special leader, someone promised long ago to bring peace and hope. For many years, people had been told of a coming Savior. They looked forward to this promised one who would bring good news and a new way of living. Life before this time was often difficult, with many people facing hardships and longing for a brighter future. The elders spoke of prophecies, ancient words passed down through generations, about a special child who would one day arrive. Mary was a young woman chosen for a very special purpose. She was gentle and faithful. Joseph was a good and honest man, a carpenter who worked with his hands to build and create. They were a humble couple, living a quiet life, but they were about to become part of a story that would change everything. They were about to become parents to a child unlike any other. One day, Mary received incredible news from an angel. The angel told her she would have a son, and that this son would be the Son of God, a king whose kingdom would never end. Mary, though surprised, trusted in God's plan and accepted this amazing role. Joseph, after some confusion, also accepted this divine message and promised to protect Mary and the child. Soon after, a decree was sent out from the Roman emperor. Everyone in the land had to travel to their ancestral town to be counted or registered. Joseph's family came from a town called Bethlehem, a small town south of Jerusalem. So, Mary, who was expecting her baby, and Joseph had to make the journey from their home in Nazareth to Bethlehem. The journey to Bethlehem was long and tiring. Mary rode on a donkey, and Joseph walked alongside, guiding the animal. They traveled through dusty roads and across rolling hills, making their way toward the town. When they finally arrived in Bethlehem, they found it very crowded. Many other people had come for the same reason, and there were no rooms left in any of the inns or guest houses. Because there was no place for them to stay, Joseph and Mary searched everywhere. They finally found a humble spot, a stable where animals were kept. It was not a palace, but it was the only shelter they could find. There, in this simple, quiet place, away from the crowds, Mary's time came to give birth to her baby. As Mary gave birth, she wrapped her newborn son in soft cloths. She laid him gently in a feeding trough, a manger, which was filled with hay. This was how Jesus, the promised child, entered the world. He was born in very humble circumstances, with only his loving parents and the quiet presence of the animals around him. Suddenly, in the fields outside Bethlehem, shepherds were watching their sheep. They were ordinary men, tending their flocks in the dark. Then, a brilliant light filled the sky. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the shepherds were filled with awe. The angel brought them extraordinary news. "Do not be afraid," the angel said. "I bring you good news that will bring great joy to all people. Today in the town of David a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord." The angel told the shepherds exactly where to find the baby, wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger. Then, a great host of other angels appeared, praising God. The shepherds, filled with wonder and excitement, decided to go immediately to Bethlehem. They hurried to the place the angel described and found Mary and Joseph, and there, just as they had been told, was the baby lying in the manger. The shepherds saw the baby and understood the angel's message. They realized this was no ordinary child. They returned to their flocks, glorifying and praising God for all they had seen and heard. News of the baby began to spread, not through grand pronouncements, but through the simple accounts of these shepherds who had witnessed something amazing. And so, the child Jesus was born. He was the promised Savior, the Messiah, God's own Son, born in humility. His arrival wasn't marked by royal fanfare, but by the gentle love of his parents, the presence of animals, and the awe-filled visit of shepherds. This child, born in a stable, showed that great purpose can come in the humblest of ways. It reminds us that even in the simplest of circumstances, something truly significant can begin. Far away, a very long time ago, in a land around a large freshwater lake called the Sea of Galilee, a special story unfolded. This area was known for its calm waters and busy fishing villages. It was a place where people lived simple lives, often spending their days working and traveling. In those times, daily life often involved journeys by foot or by boat across the lake. Fishermen would spend their nights casting nets, hoping for a good catch. The rhythm of life was connected to the sun rising and setting, and the changing weather patterns over the water. People understood the lake's power, both for providing food and for its sudden storms. Among the people living there was a kind teacher named Jesus. He traveled with a group of close companions, who were called disciples. These disciples learned from Jesus and helped him. Many of them were fishermen who knew the Sea of Galilee very well, and they shared a special bond with their teacher. One day, after a busy time of teaching many people, Jesus told his disciples to get into a boat and go across to the other side of the lake. He then went up a mountain by himself to spend some quiet time alone. As evening arrived, the disciples set off in their boat, leaving Jesus behind on the shore. As night grew darker, a strong wind began to blow across the lake. The water grew rough, and tall waves crashed against the boat, making the journey difficult. The disciples struggled to row against the wind and waves. Then, in the darkness, they saw a figure coming toward them, walking on top of the water. They were surprised and unsure, thinking it might be a ghost. But then, a voice called out to them from the figure on the water. It was Jesus, who said, "Be of good cheer, it is I, do not be afraid." One of the disciples, named Peter, was encouraged by Jesus' voice. He bravely asked, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." Jesus simply replied, "Come." Peter then stepped out of the boat and began to walk on the water, moving toward Jesus. As Peter walked on the water, he looked around at the strong wind and the powerful waves. He started to feel fearful, and his attention shifted from Jesus to the difficult conditions around him. Because of this fear, his steps became unsteady, and he began to sink down into the water. Peter then cried out, "Lord, save me." Without a moment's delay, Jesus reached out his hand and firmly caught Peter. He helped Peter stand on the water again. Jesus then asked Peter why he had doubted, explaining that focusing on fear can make things difficult. Immediately after Jesus caught Peter, they both climbed back into the boat. As soon as they were safely inside, the wind stopped, and the lake became calm again. The other disciples in the boat watched all this with wonder and a deepened understanding. They felt a sense of peace and understanding about who Jesus was. From that moment on, the boat smoothly reached the shore where they intended to go. The disciples continued their travels and their daily work alongside Jesus, but with a new perspective. The memory of that night, and what they had witnessed, stayed with them, reminding them of the power they had seen. This story teaches a simple lesson. Even when life feels challenging, or when we face difficulties that seem overwhelming, focusing on what is kind and good can make a big difference. It shows the importance of trusting in positive things and not letting fear take complete hold. With the calming of the storm and the new morning light, a quiet sense of peace settled over the lake and the disciples. Their journey continued, filled with further lessons and discoveries, under the vast, open sky. A long time ago, in a peaceful land called Galilee, a remarkable event unfolded near a small town. People had traveled from many villages and homes to gather on a grassy hillside. They came together to listen to a kind and special teacher, spending the whole day learning from him by the quiet waters of a lake. In those times, life was often simple, and people walked long distances to reach their destinations. It was common for crowds to gather, eager to hear wise words. Many came from far away, bringing what little food they had for their journey. They would spend hours, sometimes even days, listening and learning, often forgetting the passage of time. The main person everyone came to see was Jesus. He was a gentle teacher who spoke about kindness and how to live well. People were drawn to his words, and they loved to be near him. The crowd included men, women, and many children, all sitting patiently on the green grass, listening intently to everything Jesus shared. As the day began to draw to a close, the sun started to dip low in the sky. The large crowd had been there since morning, and many had not eaten for a long time. People realized they had traveled far and were beginning to feel very hungry. Their stomachs rumbled quietly, and some children started to look tired. Jesus noticed that the people were hungry. He turned to his friends, called disciples, and asked a question. Where can we buy bread for all these people to eat? He was thinking about how everyone could be fed, knowing that it was important for them to have sustenance after such a long day of listening. His friends looked around, trying to figure out what they could do. They realized they had very little food with them. One of Jesus's friends found a young boy who was willing to share his small lunch. The boy offered 5 small loaves of bread and 2 little fish, a very humble meal for one person. The challenge was quite clear. There were so many people. About 5,000 men were present, and with the women and children also there, the number was much, much larger. How could such a tiny amount of food, just 5 small loaves and 2 fish, possibly be enough to feed thousands of hungry people? It seemed impossible. Then, a special moment happened. Jesus took the 5 loaves of bread and the 2 fish. He looked up towards the sky and gave thanks, saying a simple blessing over the food. Then, he began to break the bread and the fish into pieces. He gave these pieces to his friends, and they started to pass them out to the people. As Jesus's friends distributed the food, something remarkable occurred. Everyone in the large crowd ate as much as they wanted. They passed the pieces of bread and fish from person to person, and each person found enough to satisfy their hunger. There was plenty for everyone to eat, and no one went away hungry. After everyone had eaten their fill, Jesus asked his friends to gather all the leftover pieces. They walked among the crowd and carefully collected every bit that remained. When they finished, they had filled 12 baskets with the extra pieces of bread and fish. There was so much food left over, more than they had started with. From this story, we can learn a simple but important lesson. It teaches us that even a very small amount of something can become enough for many people when it is offered with kindness and shared. It shows that when there seems to be not enough, provision can still be made in surprising ways. The large crowd, now full and content, began their journeys back to their homes and villages as the evening twilight settled over the land. The day, which had started with hunger, ended with everyone feeling satisfied and cared for. It was a peaceful ending to a memorable day by the lake. This story unfolds long ago, in a land called Judea, in a small village named Bethany. Bethany was a quiet place, nestled among hills and olive groves, just a short distance from the bustling city of Jerusalem. It was a time when villages were close-knit communities, where everyone knew their neighbors and life followed the rhythms of farming and family. In those days, people lived simply. News traveled slowly, often by word of mouth. Sickness was a common and serious concern, and when someone passed away, their family and friends gathered to mourn together, following customs that had been passed down through generations. These were times of both close community bonds and challenging uncertainties. Among the residents of Bethany lived a man named Lazarus and his two sisters, Mary and Martha. They were known and respected in their village. Lazarus was a dear friend of Jesus, a teacher and healer who traveled throughout the land, sharing his message and helping many people. Jesus often visited their home in Bethany, finding a warm welcome there. Life in Bethany continued in its familiar way. Lazarus, Mary, and Martha shared a close bond, and their home was a place of hospitality. It seemed like a peaceful existence, filled with daily routines and simple pleasures. Their friendship with Jesus brought a special warmth to their lives, and everything appeared stable and ordinary in their quiet village. One day, Lazarus fell ill. His condition grew worse, causing great worry for his sisters. They sent a messenger to Jesus, who was in another place, saying, "Lord, the one you love is sick." Jesus received this urgent message. However, instead of traveling immediately to Bethany, he stayed where he was for 2 more days. By the time Jesus decided to go to Bethany, a significant change had occurred. Lazarus had already passed away and been laid in a tomb. When Jesus finally set out for Bethany, he arrived to find that Lazarus had been in the tomb for 4 days. Martha and Mary, along with many friends and neighbors, were deep in sorrow. Their village was filled with the sounds of mourning. People were gathered, sharing their sadness and offering comfort, as was the custom for those who had lost a loved one. The grief was evident in every home. Upon Jesus' arrival, Martha went out to meet him. She said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Later, Mary expressed the same deep sorrow and belief. Jesus felt the profound sadness surrounding them. He asked where Lazarus was laid. He was then led to the tomb, which was a cave, and a large stone covered its entrance. Jesus stood before the tomb and said, "Take away the stone." Martha, still filled with sorrow, mentioned that by now there would be a strong odor, as Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. Despite her concern, Jesus asked them to remove the stone. Then, he looked up and spoke, giving thanks. After this, he called out in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." A remarkable moment unfolded. To the astonishment of everyone present, Lazarus slowly emerged from the tomb. He was still wrapped in grave cloths, with his hands and feet bound, and a cloth around his face. The people who had gathered for mourning, including Martha and Mary, watched in silent wonder. Their sorrow was replaced by shock and then by an overwhelming sense of relief and joy. Jesus then told them, "Unbind him, and let him go." Lazarus was freed from his grave cloths and walked among them once more. The news of what had happened in Bethany spread quickly. Many people who had witnessed this extraordinary event believed in Jesus, their faith renewed and strengthened by what they had seen. Life in Bethany, for those who had been grieving, was profoundly changed. This story shows us that even when situations seem final and without hope, unexpected things can happen. It reminds us that challenges, no matter how great, can sometimes be overcome in ways we cannot imagine. The return of Lazarus offered a powerful message of hope, suggesting that even death is not the end of possibility. And so, the memory of Lazarus, and the events of that day in Bethany, continued to be shared. The story remains a quiet reminder of profound change and the enduring presence of hope, even in the face of what seems impossible.